Welcome to this episode of Let's Chat with Brandon and Tyler. Tyler is unavailable this time around. He isn't feeling the greatest, but we do have Dr. Mike Allsen, Professor Emeritus of UW Whitewater, in studio. He was also my music minor advisor for my first year of my undergrad. So welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tyler.
Well, Tyler's gone.
Brandon. Thanks, Brandon. And long time no see.
It's been literally like 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
Because a trombone choir rehearsal.
Exactly.
Dr. Allsen also is co-director of the Glenwood Moravian Trombone Choir, which does include a couple of trumpets. So for starters, I know we have audio files he sent me to share, but why is it primarily just cylindrical instruments?
Well, that's a great idea. Great question. The real Moravian tradition, and we'll hear a sound sample of this later on, is to play with soprano, alto, tenor, and bass trombones. And in fact, when we started, we actually did that. And there are a few Moravian groups around the country that still play with soprano, alto, tenor, bass trombones. But we decided a long time ago that we'd rather sound good and play interesting music.
So therefore adding a couple trumpets, and then every once in a blue moon, I'd bring on like a guest instrument for like one piece, which doesn't happen all the time.
Right. So, I mean, we maintain the sound of a cylindrical bore choir. So we don't generally, tubas are not too bad.
It says that after rehearsing down in the river.
Yeah. But if we put a euphonium in the group or a horn in the group, it really messes things up.
Now, I know a lot of our listeners won't know what in the world cylindrical instruments are besides just like trumpets, trombones, things like that. So what makes them cylindrical instruments?
Well, basically a cylindrical bore instrument, like a trombone, is really just a long tube, right?
Yep.
And that tube does not grow very much over the course of 15 feet. Cylindrical or conical bore instruments are like the horn or the euphonium or the tuba, where basically from the very beginning of the tube at the mouthpiece, it starts to grow and bigger. Has a somewhat different sound, a little bit more mellow sound.
Okay. And
cylindrical bore instruments tend to be a bit brighter.
Okay.
So.
And then the first piece of music you wanted to share is as a Moravian lower brass tune that on the file is 168A. So what's the title of that?
It's Jesus, Source of My Salvation. Okay, so this one is a little bit of a diversion from the cylindrical bore, because they actually use tubas on the bottom. But these are all trombones, sort of tenor and bass trombones, normal garden variety trombones like you're used to seeing. Later on, I'll play an excerpt where it's soprano, alto, tenor, bass trombones. So what we're hearing here is part of the core repertoire of this band, this ensemble, and that's chorales. Chorales are basically SATB, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, settings of German hymn tunes. And there's a lot of Moravian groups around the country that just play chorales. Our group at Glenwood, as you well know, we play a lot more than chorales.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes you hear other tunes that you arranged or composed a lot of them.
Right.
And aren't a lot of arrangements from like the 1400s or 1500s usually?
We do a lot of everything. We do, for example, right now we're working on a piece by Maurice Duruflé, who was a 20th century French composer.
Yep.
We do plenty of early music as well. And basically the idea is it's a lot more challenging than just playing chorales.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Like I've had to learn and relearn trombone on the fly, essentially.
You're doing well.
And when I got moved over to bass trombone, you started calling me grasshopper.
Yeah. Now there's a dated reference that none of your younger viewers will get.
No. Doesn't reference come from some media in like the 70s or 80s?
Yeah. Basically, it's kung fu.
Yep.
So anyway, I was talking about chorales. The title, I guess the title of my talk here or our episode
is
Easter Brass.
Yep, it's Easter Brass and the Madison Symphony Orchestra.
Right. The Easter, I know you had James Heroux on last
week Thursday
to talk about Moravians as the Easter people. Well, Easter is a big deal in the Moravian Church, and it's a big deal with instrumental music as well. We don't do it very big in Madison because we're a very, very small church in a large town. But in places where it's a much more dominant Moravian community like Winston-Salem, South Carolina, or
North
Bethlehem in Pennsylvania, it's very commonplace for Easter to start at midnight and for these large brass groups to basically process from all corners of the town into the church to be there at sunrise.
And this is talking home Moravian in Winston-Salem.
Right, exactly. The sort of big Holy Land.
I know Pastor Matt Knapp of Surge Bay Moravian was trying to get my dad at one point to go take part of it because apparently there's like hundreds of people who go around the community
right.
to play their horns, and my dad's a trumpet player.
Right. Yeah, it's a huge deal. We don't do it that big at Madison.
No, we have a small group, and it takes the entire back of the
sanctuary.
Yeah, the sanctuary.
Right.
And there's not a lot of room, although I'm sure you would always be happy to have more people join.
Yep. Yeah, the group has expanded and contracted over the years. For a long time, we had about 18 regular players, and it's a little smaller these days, but really good. Sounds
Indeed.
Good. So anyway, talking about the Easter service, on Sunday, or a week from Sunday, we'll be playing the Easter sunrise service, and that's traditionally just trombones, and we play basically 6 hymns in the course of that service as accompaniments, and those are traditional chorales that we have played now for 40 some years.
I know I've played some of those growing up in Door County,
mm-hmm.
and at some point my dad ended up taking control of the Moravian group,
the band,
and because they sometimes use more than just brass because they're working with what they have, and
right.
Oftentimes my dad's bringing in middle school and high school students to play sometimes.
Yeah, and
there's not a lot.
And that's the case with actually a lot of Moravian churches. They tend to have a church band rather than a brass group.
Yep, and my dad typically just does that over at Shiloh Church and just on the west side or southern Door area of Door County, once a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a brass group like we do that plays
year round.
Yeah, year round, every third Sunday of the month, usually, unless if it's a special occasion where get moved to a fourth or a second.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's a really wonderful group, and as you found out, it's a bunch of friends.
Indeed.
And it's very ecumenical. I mean, I think there's only about 4 or 5 guys in the group that are actually members of the church. There are Catholics, there are agnostics, there may be an atheist or 2 in the group, but it's all really kind of a wonderful friendship.
You have a friendship, brass choir,
right?
Small ensemble, and sometimes smaller ensembles can be more enjoyable playing than those larger ones. I find myself having fun in both types of ensembles where, let's say in the Sun Prairie Community Band, where this past November, I was elected to their board, and then one of the meetings, I was asked if I wanted to basically be the chairman of the advertising committee. And I'm like, I could do that. And then a few months later, slip and break my kneecap as in split in half, 3 centimeters.
Oh, jeez.
Yep.
Ouch.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly fun. And then the other tune that you wanted to share was Jesus Makes My Heart Rejoice.
Right, and let me set this one up by saying this is another specifically Moravian trombone choir related tradition. There are what are called funeral chorales. I don't know if you've ever looked in the Green Book, our chorale book, and there are all of these chorales that have designations like old men,
Yep.
younger women, single women, widows. This is actually a tradition that goes back to the 18th century in the Moravian settlements. The trombone choir became kind of the, sort of the public address system, if you will. And so they are basically the loudest thing around. So they would gather together to play the hymn, O Sacred Head Now Wounded, called the Passion Chorale. Da-dee-da-da-da-dee-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum. And that would be everybody's signal to put down what they were doing, because everybody's probably within earshot of the trombone choir, and put down what they're doing and listen to the next hymn. Because the next hymn would, if there was a death in the community, the next hymn would tell you what part of that community the death had occurred in. So that's why certain hymns are for widowers and so forth.
Makes sense.
This one is actually for little girls. So this would be a young girl who had died, would be announced with this particular chorale. And this performance is actually by a group called the Boston Baroque. And it's guys that are playing on soprano, alto, tenor, bass trombones. But these are instruments as they would have used back in the 18th century. This is a very interesting sound.
And how long have you been playing trombone?
Oh gosh, since 5th grade.
So you did that and got your PhD
Basically
with it.
50 years,
And
54 years. No.
Have you preferred doing bass trombone more or tenor?
Well, I played tenor, most of early on. But then I actually took an audition for the Madison Symphony. I refer to that as coming out of the closet as a bass trombone player. I basically played bass trombone for 40-some years, and I prefer bass right now.
Yep. And does your bass trombone have like the singular F attachment, or does it have...
It's got two.
It's got two.
Yeah.
So the other one is, I like to say, a D attachment, was it?
Yeah. Actually, the horn that you're playing now is the horn that I played in the Madison Symphony when I first played bass.
Nice. And I know that when I was in the beginning part of the recovery of surgery, you're like, here, play around with this for a little. I did a little, and then my mom ended up using it for Sevastopol's musical that my dad happens to conduct, and he gets people from the Peninsula Symphonic Band and high school students to play in it because Sevastopol is a very, very tiny school. I went to Sturgeon Bay, but either way, it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. You get a bunch of people come together and rehearse frequently.
Your mom, when I talked to her, was very excited about the idea of having a bass trombone in the house.
Yeah, and she had fun using it. One of her things that she would come back from rehearsal, and she would just go, I splatted, and then laughed about it. And then, I don't know if you ever seen I don't know how much of a football fan you are as well, but you have YouTube channel of Tom Grossi. He is in New York. He was born and raised in New York as a Green Bay fan. And then after the NFL draft, he's actually moving to, I like to say, Milwaukee. I know it's somewhere in Wisconsin. And he has this character by the name of Ref. And the only thing Ref would say is flag. And I think every once in a while he might say no flag. And my mom really likes watching Grossi's stuff as well. There were a couple of times closer to the end of the 6 weeks of not being able to bend my knee. And we would just try to hold conversations just for a little bit of just saying splat.
Splat and no splat.
Splat, 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 splat.
Well, I try not to make too much splatting.
Yeah, I gotta make sure everything sounds good
when I play. So, yeah.
And then you also do have a book coming out for, related to the Madison Symphony as well.
Sure, I talked about playing in the Madison Symphony. I played in the orchestra for many years. And I've also been writing program notes for the orchestra since 1984, before you were born, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was born in 98.
Yeah, rub it in, man. The Madison Symphony is actually having its 100th anniversary season next year.
Okay.
100th season. Its first concert was in 1926. And I've been working on a book on the history of the orchestra. It's called A Century of the Madison Symphony Orchestra. And it's coming out very soon. I'm not exactly sure if it'll be either May 1st or June 1st at this point. And at that point, we'll have a website up on the Madison Symphony site that will tell folks how to get the book.
Yep. So like you can get it like through them. You can get it through Amazon. And wasn't there like a bookstore somewhere?
Yeah, actually, it's probably better to order it not through Amazon because the Madison Symphony actually gets more money out of it that way. And I think Jeff Bezos has plenty of money.
Yeah, he just kind of owns the company. He doesn't really do much on it anymore.
Yeah, I know. But if you can avoid
Giving
them more money than the MSO, I think it's probably a good idea.
I would agree. It's always better for local organizations to get more of the cut.
But this book has been a real labor of love for the last 6 years. It's been wonderful to go back and really find some of this history. For example, one of the stats that is always just amazing to me is the fact that the orchestra's only had 4 music directors in the course of 100 years, and only 2 in the last 60 years, basically.
And then one last question that absolutely comes to my mind, and I don't know if you have a different answer for it, but do you know how or why the Moravians got so intertwined with music to the point where they became inseparable? Because I've played a piece called Moravian Polka my first summer playing with the Sun Prairie Community Band.
Oh, well, I don't know. I think it has to do with traditions that go back well before the Moravians with the Moravians. I mean,
with the John and before John Huss.
Yeah. John Huss and the Bohemian Brethren. A lot of the music that was associated with these groups was actually war music. I mean, I think James talked a little bit about the fact
with a little bit of the Hussite wars.
Right. And so, I mean, this is music that, I don't know, it's like Battle Hymn of the Republic or something like that, music that really gets under your skin. But no, I think in general, it's been a much more positive thing in Moravian life.
Absolutely.
The Moravian, they used to actually be organized as choirs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, a lot of the Moravian hymns, for example, are antiphonal, like the Hosanna.
Yep, the Hosanna and some of the others.
Right.
And aren't they for
men versus women, or one side of the congregation versus the other?
I was going to go into something like how many different keys are written for the same hymn.
Oh. Well,
I see that happening a lot.
Actually, one of the funny story is there's this tune called Hosanna, which is done on Palm Sunday and on first Sunday of Advent. It's this just joyful hymn that is sung between either the men and the women of the congregation, or one half of the congregation and the other. We actually played it one year with organ, back when we had a decent organist, and she had forgotten that she'd agreed to play the tune in A flat major rather than A major, and so we came in A major, da da dee da dee da da da. Then she came in, da 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 dee da da da.
Oh boy!
Yeah, it was. So we stopped and started over again.
Well, because those are very conflicting keys.
Right. A flat and A major.
Yeah, very, very conflicting.
Right.
I did enjoy my music minor. I was happy I got through aural skills. That class, I was afraid that if I couldn't pass, I would have had to move to a different minor, because I viewed aural skills as absolute hell for me due to a super anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And that super anxiety prevents me from singing in front of others. But however, if I use a mouthpiece, I can actually do multiphonics and have fun doing it and not have any anxiety problems. And I'm like, I know buzzing your lips and then just doing humming / singing when you're buzzing your lips, which is the exact same thing when you're doing that. It's just
so they let you get by with
multiphonics, correct? Multiphonics. And I ended up barely passing with like a D-.
Oh, but
and it was I only had to take the one class out of the 4 levels. But I was like, oh, that class. I'm glad I never have to do that again.
To this day, when I sight sing something new, I always play air trombone.
Naturally. Well, you can always get other music stuff that's going on, in especially like the Dane County area, by checking out for example, the Madison Symphony website. You can go to the university's website. You can find all the music stuff that's being played there. The Sun Prairie Community Band has their own website, and there may or may not be something within the city of Sun Prairie's calendar for when the concerts are during the summer. I think it was last summer when we started going to like 3 different parks. And thank you for coming on the program.
My pleasure.